Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin,
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Karis Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Karis Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Karis Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Wow, I'm talking to myself again. I seem to do that often. Today we have with us Ed Fisher. He is an engineer, and he is also dealing with this election integrity problem that we've been having all over the United States, Canada, everywhere. And so you're out in West Virginia. You were originally from Pittsburgh and so forth, or Pennsylvania, and you were in this fight here now in West Virginia. I'll let you come in and give the long list of accomplishments because I'm sure you know them a lot better than me. So, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, and thank you for having me on, Dale. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's good to be speaking to your audience. So I'd like to just kick off this Dale with a few slides just to talk through how we got to be um, our, the organization that we are. We're called Citizens for West Virginia Election Integrity, and we formed ourselves. Let's see, back just to keep going. Next one. There you go. Okay. All right. So you can follow along with this, and then after that, basically, we can go through questions that Dale has, or I don't know if you have feedback from the audience, Dale, but any questions, we can talk through those. And in fact, while we're going through these, just a few slides, I'm happy to have conversations in the middle of that. Okay, so we are a group. As I said, I founded the group in 2023, and we're basically a set of volunteer concerned citizens. We're statewide in almost all the major population centers, and that's important because when it comes to registration, fixing registration issues, we need people all over the state, and to do door-to-door canvassing and things like that. So the backgrounds of the people in the group include several of us are in IT. We've got a cybersecurity guy who's done election integrity work across the country. We've got legal backgrounds. We have a former election clerk. We have people who have done door-to-door canvassing. We have a person who's our communications specialist that helps with the press releases. We have one person who's a couple of us who've done actually written legislation, working with the legislature in West Virginia, and we actually have a member of the House of Delegates in West Virginia. And we have a member of the Senate chamber in West Virginia. Both of those people were members of our group. And then in the last election in November, they both became elected to the House and the Senate. So that's been really good. So they started out in the grassroots, and then that's helping us because sometimes when you get into the legislature, lots of things happen. And now that they're really well grounded in the grassroots, and they're helping us quite a bit. And in fact, one of the House people that are a member of the group spoke against the bill and helped to defeat it that we wanted to oppose, that we were opposing. Okay, so what are we for? So the big word is transparency, right? We want maximum transparency in our elections. We want every voter to feel, and citizen, every voter to feel like they can see everything in the process. For example, when you have a bank account, all right, you can go online, and even though there are machines that are processing your transactions, you can actually see every transaction, and you can see how it affects your balance, right? That gives you a lot of transparency. And so we have to have maximum transparency in elections so that we're positively sure that every vote is counted correctly. And we know that didn't occur in the last several elections. We've taken the approach of engaging with West Virginia election officials at the state and county level, including the Secretary of State, the county clerks, and the legislators. We've identified vulnerabilities in our elections, and we've worked to mitigate those. Now, West Virginia is an interesting state in that it's not a swing state, and it only has 4 electoral votes. So we don't always get the attention of the bad actors like some other swing states do. But we still have the same vulnerabilities. And so we have to make sure we get rid of those vulnerabilities.
So
We're working. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so basically what you're identifying is that even though that there isn't a hotbed state, they're still doing the same types of things. And what you're looking at is a control system nightmare. What you're doing is essentially cleaning that up and making sure that it's functioning properly, because there should be a lot of irregularities that need to be corrected and made, ensuring that it functions smoothly and having the right, I mean, checks and balances so that you can put it back into the proper operation of the system, which your electoral system is a control system. And all the
That's absolutely correct. And we do have fairly good election officials in West Virginia, and so we have better results than many other states, right? But if the wrong people were to get into power, right, and that can happen, we've seen that in many other states, then we still have many of the same vulnerabilities that these other states have. Now, we don't have mail-in ballots. We do have absentees, but that's a smaller percentage of our total votes than some other places. Okay, so there have been some good rules in place, and we're continuing to strengthen those rules. But we still have to work diligently to get more transparency in our elections. And of course, just to the next point, fraud starts in registration. I mean, that's where it starts, right? You have to clean up your registration system. And so we're working with some national organizations and our own systems and procedures to do that, plus some door-to-door canvassing. The other thing you have to do is you have to raise public awareness of election issues in your state. So we typically and routinely take anecdotal surveys to see what people trust and what they don't trust. And so that informs our efforts and our principles as to what to fix, right? Because many people think, people trust them, trust the elections. But, we typically do that. And 9 out of 10 people have some issues with elections, even though, that they may be better in West Virginia, they're affected by what goes on all over the country, right? And they're aware of some of those issues. And the other thing is in West Virginia, like I say, we're not a swing state, but if we were to become a swing state and had more electoral votes, then we would get more attention by bad actors. And so even if it doesn't swing an election totally, you can still impact the election and the public, the popular vote, right? And we know that many people want to get rid of the Electoral College and go to a popular vote. So it's important that that we don't have our elections impact at all by any percent. Okay, and then so since our group is not in control of the legislation, we need to work with our legislators and our Secretary of State and our county clerks to endorse legislation. So we really deeply analyze it, we review it, all the legislation, and then we endorse certain legislation. We oppose legislation that doesn't accomplish our goals. So, all right, let's see. Once you go to the next slide, Dale.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say that, I know that when I was talking on Steve Stern's call there on the 3rd of April, and I outlined the NIH, they actually put something out on their website that talked, and they called it election flexibility. And they showed all the changes that were made as a result of COVID, which were unconstitutional. And every state had some degree. Some were very low, some were extremely high, but most were in that moderate sort of area. Did you guys experience any changes, very many changes, the elections or the procedures that they use for elections in West Virginia during that time?
Yeah, we had, so Dale, we had just moved here. So, we've always, from what I can see, so I've only been active in this area for, let's say, 2 years, okay, just intensively, right? From from what I can see, we were early on against mailing out all these ballots to everybody, right? As some states do. That is a really critical thing. And we did have, some good people in West Virginia government who worked on the registration systems and, took out invalid registrations. So it has been pretty good. But of course, in other states, COVID was a disaster from an election standpoint because they used that excuse to totally change elections and make them much less secure.
Well, yes, and I mean, you saw the same thing kind of happen here in Canada, where that was used as a justification to start making changes that weren't normally done. And then you saw in the United States, like the ridiculous amount of time that it took to count like the ballots in 2020, which was absolutely unheard of, right? Like, I mean, most of the time you're done in one night, right? And
Right,
and that
right, and well, and even in 2024, California, Arizona, several
Mhm.
states, it took a month to count all the ballots, and I mean, you can guess what that's about. So, as long as you can keep counting, then you can keep. I'll say there's certainly the possibility of manipulation. The longer you count, so that, in fact, we had a bill proposed that all ballots must be in, even mail-in absentee ballots must be in by election night at 7:30. It didn't make it, okay, but we're going to continue to push that. And of course, recently in Mississippi, the courts ruled that they had to be in by election day. So we hope to do that so we don't have that issue, and with regards to counting ballots after the election day. Okay, let's see. So, this next slide is what have we accomplished? Okay, and now as I go through this, I want to help other people, and we've been helped by many other people that have gone before us. But maybe there's some ideas here that could be used in other states. Okay, so we've taken slightly different approach than some other people, just because we only started intensely about 2 years ago in 2023. So the first thing that we did is we engaged the legislature, the Secretary of State, and county clerks in working sessions. So in order to get things done and have laws passed and get them implemented, you need to have relationships with people. So we have really gone about trying to develop those relationships with election officials within the state. And as I say, we have many good people in the state. They're election officials. So this has allowed us to do that, right? So it's not so much of an adversarial situation as in developing strong relationships so that we can get things passed. We also established a grassroots awareness through a number of press releases we've done. We've had millions of views on those press releases. That helps to raise the profile of election integrity. We've had a number of public sessions with voters, and we try to participate in podcasts like this one and some other ones that are coming up to raise awareness in West Virginia. We also have developed partnerships with national and state groups for a couple of reasons. One is to get the word out, and then some of the people that are in those, like other state organizations, are actually members of our group because they're focused on election integrity, whereas some of these other organizations are like MOVCAC that I have listed there. They're broader. They deal with all kinds of issues, right, with the vaccines and so on. So that gives those people that are interested in election integrity in those organizations, it gives them a focal point for that. And then nationally, we've partnered with Election Integrity Network very recently. That's Cleta Mitchell's organization. We've been partnering with True the Vote using their IV3 website to identify invalid registrations in the registration system and to challenge those. And we've also partnered with Fight Voter Fraud. That's Linda Sinkowitz's group. And so they have given us double registrations, double voting, and people who vote in more than one state. So they voted in Pennsylvania, and then they voted West Virginia. And so those cases have been sent to our Secretary of State, and also like double voters have been sent to the FBI by Fight Voter Fraud. So those partnerships are really effective for us. And so in addition to those, we presented a multiple cases of election fraud evidence to our West Virginia Secretary of State, and then they conduct formal investigations. For example, we had door-to-door canvassing where we had a number of vacant lots, right, that supposedly voted. So things like that, we bring to their attention. Okay.
Yeah. Just saying that the working with other groups is important. Like I was sitting down and explaining the last time I talked on, and I had a podcast with John Goodman about this, on how COVID was used to create the circumstances for a massive fraud in 2020. When you begin to look at state by state and all the different areas that they justified, like the mail-in ballots, the drop boxes, and all these other processes to do something that they were already doing, but they didn't have the opportunity to do it that flagrantly, right? So they needed that situation. And so this kind of ties all these things together. And it's good that you're working with the other groups, because they had to do a lot of other things to help push the election fraud forward. Because if they can select people rather than letting the people elect, then that creates a problem. We should make sure that we reduce the risk to a reasonable level, that you can sit down and say, okay, I can have reasonable confidence that these elections are secure. Otherwise, what's the point of voting if your vote doesn't matter, right?
That's right. And even if somebody fraudulently votes in Arizona or California, that still affects us in West Virginia, right? We're disenfranchised when people vote in other states and they're fraudulent votes. And I would state that elections are the most important thing that we have as citizens, because if the right people do not get elected that are voted on by the citizens, then that's when bad things happen. And we've seen that, right? And certainly there's so many suspicious things that have gone on in our elections, and the pandemics and so on. And so we have to get the right people in place to get us out of these problems, because otherwise the country will go bankrupt. The country will just the country that we knew, that we grew up in, will just cease to exist. And so I believe strongly in our country. My family does, and we will work diligently to try to do whatever we can to save it. And it's going to take all of us, right? We're in a 1776 moment, and it takes all of us to make this happen. One person can't do it. President Trump can't do it alone. We have to have all of us involved in this to save our country. And I do what I do for my kids and grandkids, right? I mean, that's I'd like to be sitting on a porch someplace, but that's not going to get it done. So we have to all work together to make it happen.
I agree.
So slip to the next slide. I just continue accomplishments, and hopefully some of these will be inspirational to some other folks out there that are in the audience. All right, so this is a very important one. So we facilitated the establishment of an Election Integrity Caucus in West Virginia in August. So we held a dinner event in Charleston, and we invited probably 30 senators and delegates to that event. And with that, and with some emails and so on, we were able to get over 20 senators and delegates, legislators, to that meeting. And we basically kicked off the Election Integrity Caucus in West Virginia. And I don't know if there are other election integrity caucuses in other states, but I think this is something that other states should really consider. And we found it to be great, and it's really terrific because we have two of the people in the Election Integrity Caucus are members of our citizens group, right? They started with our citizens group before they were even elected. And that way we have more leverage in terms of what happens in the Election Integrity Caucus. Okay.
I just want
Another thing,
I just wanted to make
go
a note there, because you mentioned that you had people in the grassroots that are actually now inside the legislature in your state. And so
correct.
when you this is extremely important, because a lot of the people, when you're looking at sometimes some of the career politicians, they lose touch with the people. Someone who's in the grassroots has a good pulse of what the people want because they were working with them. So I want people who are watching this to understand the importance of having even grassroots people that are in the government, because they understand more than somebody who's been a politician for the last 50 years.
That's absolutely true. And we've met with a lot of legislators, and there are a lot of good folks, but there are legislators that are more concerned about their career than they are serving the public. Now, I know that's not a surprise to anybody, but we had a guy who we were working with. I would call him more of a moderate guy, and basically we had one great meeting with him, and then on the second meeting, he said, well, I just can't continue because my career would, I was told my career would end, okay, if I continued working on this. So and we've never talked about who that is or anything, but the point is, it tells us that there are some forces at play in politics, and we know that. That basically don't want changes, right? So we have to fight against that. And the way to do that is to have grassroots people go up the ladder in the legislature, so that we get what they serve the people. Okay, they're not worried about their careers, and they have other jobs. If they're not elected again, it's the same thing in Congress, right? We have too many people who have spent their whole lives in politics. At the founding of the country, we had people who were citizens. They had jobs, and they went to the Continental Congress, and they voted on things, and they formed the Constitution. But they weren't paid. They didn't get retirement funds. They were citizens. They did it for the love of country, and so we need more of that in our Congress and in our state legislatures.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. Since I talked about the Election Integrity Caucus, let me go to the third bullet first. So we actually in-depth reviewed and analyzed all 2025 West Virginia election integrity legislation. We endorsed 27 bills, and we kept updating the legislature during the general session about what we endorsed and what we opposed. We opposed 2 bills, and out of that group, 8 of those endorsed bills actually passed both chambers. Some of them have been signed by the government because our general session just ended this past Saturday. Okay, and some of them still have to be signed by the governor, but most likely all those 8 endorsed bills will be passed into law, including 2 big ones. There were a lot. There were several. Okay. But one of the big ones is ranked choice voting, prohibiting that. That's huge, okay? Because that's how some of the less than perfect candidates get into office that we've seen in Congress, for example. And then we also passed photo ID, okay, in the legislature. So those are 2 big ones. There was another big one that we wanted that didn't quite make it. It passed one chamber, but then got stuck at the end because there's not enough time to do everything. And that would be to put all ballot images and cast vote records on the Secretary of State website. So we had the Secretary of State support on that, but we just didn't quite get it past the finish line. So 8 passed, and then 3 more passed at least one chamber, including that bill. The power of that bill would be that would give every citizen in West Virginia the ability to compare ballot images, which they're anonymous, with the precinct votes, and basically be able to audit precinct votes. Okay, every citizen could do that with online ballot images at the Secretary of State website. So we're going to do our best to get that passed next time. So that's one of the things we're working on. Now, we also oppose certain bills. So one of them was a non-starter. They wanted to do mail out ballots to everybody in the state. That craziness, right? That they did it.
Yes.
Yeah. And they also wanted to do drop boxes and stuff like that. So that was defeated very early on. Okay, that never went to the floor. But another one passed one house and passed out of committee, one chamber, the Senate, and passed out of committee in the House. And we worked very hard to defeat that bill. It would have stripped the voters' right to take a photo of a completed ballot at the precinct. Now, we made several arguments that seemed to stick with people. So one of them is that you can't stop an absentee ballot voter from photographing their ballot. The other thing is there have been candidates who were left off of ballots, right? And you have to have evidence in order to win something in court. And so the only way you can do that is to photograph your completed ballot before you put it in the ballot box. Okay, so we feel very happy about that. It was defeated like 65 to 33.
Well, it's also your vote. You have a right to record how you voted. How can they tell you, no, you can't do that? That's your vote, right?
That's how we feel. Okay, but we had even some members of our caucus that voted for that bill. Okay, so we learned a lot. Okay, in this process. And one major reason it was defeated was because our delegate that was in our group, our citizens group, actually spoke against the bill on the floor. That was very instrumental. We sent out emails to the governor and the whole legislature, and I think that laid the groundwork. And then when she spoke against it and had some other folks speak against it as well, from an evidence standpoint, then it was defeated. So we were very happy about that. And even, some of the people that were for it, I mean, we supported other of their bills, but we'll get there. Okay, we just have to keep working at it. This does not happen in 1 month or 1 year, right? We tell everybody, we say we're here for years. We're here for the long run. Okay, we're going to get this done, and we're not going to stop until it gets done. And we're all volunteers, so no, we can't be fired. We just have to keep plugging. If we don't stop, we'll be successful. And just like our founding fathers, they didn't stop, right? You'll be successful. You just keep. Your biggest danger is quitting, so you can't quit. Okay, and then this middle bullet that we have, we established a registration audit center. We actually started like late last year, but we're working through the IT part of it, getting the database set up, et cetera, getting our subscriptions to registration records. And so we're going to combine a couple of things. So we're working with True the Vote through their IV3 website to identify a lot of invalid. They have a great website, invalid registrations. But then we can do deep dives into with queries into our registration audit center because True the Vote, I think they only have their data like once a year, right? Early in the year for the whole country. But we get monthly updates. By the way, we also tried to get a bill passed this year, which we didn't, which was to have audit logs given as part of the monthly registration updates. Because if you don't have the audit logs, you can have a situation where they add a lot of people right before the election, and then they delete them immediately after, right? So they're kind of phantom voters that could vote. So you need those logs to make sure how the changes were made and who made those changes. Okay. All right. And then I have one more slide, which is what do we do next? Okay. All right. So So we'll continuing. I think we have a good plan here. We have very solid relationships in the state. Lots of people who are working with us inside and outside of government. We'll continue to work with our national partners and our state partners. And we've also, there's a new effort that DOJ is involved in that your listeners may be interested in, where, they've identified all these suspect Social Security numbers in the Social Security database, right? So if we can combine that, and they do want to do this, we can combine that with our state registration systems, then we can identify quickly which are the Social Security numbers and the registration, the registration records where we have, for example, non-citizens voting, right? And we have voting records. So, but we need that would be huge if we can work with those. So we just submitted our information to those folks, and hopefully, we'll get involved in that as well. Okay. We'll continue to spin up our registration audit center, and certainly that's going to really increase if we're working with DOJ. We'll continue to engage all the election officials on legislative priorities and identifying vulnerabilities that we have. Continue to work with county clerks on investigating those vulnerabilities. So that's what we're all about, and hopefully that's been helpful to some of your viewers in other states, and also to people that may be in West Virginia as to what's happening. So we'll continue. And by the way, anybody who would like to participate with us, volunteer your time. We've got our website posted there. It's the Citizens for West Virginia Election Integrity.org. And there's a Gmail account if you need to email us as well. So any other questions or comments that you have, Dale, I'm happy to entertain those.
Yeah, I just want to go ahead and take a short commercial break, and then we'll come back with some questions.
Sure.
All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
All right. For anybody who needs any of the MyPillow products or the new energy drinks, you can go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942. Use your promo code Karis. They got lots of good stuff, pillows, bed sheets, bath supplies, and stuff from the kitchen stuff, as well, even bathrobes and slippers. Try it out, get something good, support a good cause, and so forth. And so, go ahead.
Oh, Dale, let me just say that we have many of my pillows in our house and sheets and mattresses. So we're a supporter of his efforts.
All right, that's good. And so kind of circling back to like what we were talking about, and you know, what you're putting out here is a very good process. And I think that the idea of working with the federal government, like with the DOJ, to get those social security numbers of illegal voters would be very good, and it would save time if more states would cross-reference that to purge those people off the list and ban them and so forth, because this is important to make sure that your elections are secure. Like, I mean, I like what I see. It's sensible and reasonable and so forth.
And so far we have a lot of support in with election officials too. I'm sure not all of them do, but you have to develop relationships, because that's what it takes to make changes many times. Okay, people have to feel comfortable with what you're doing, so that they have the courage to make changes, because in general, people, especially politicians, don't like to make change. So, so they have to. Yeah, I mean, you have to have a big enough group and have enough consensus that people are fine sticking their neck out, to make significant changes. So we had a couple of good changes this year, with photo ID and with prohibiting ranked choice voting, and we'll keep at it, and we'll keep going, and keep. We're going to have a review session with our Election Integrity Caucus, our legislature, in the next few months, where we review what was passed and what wasn't passed, and we'll advocate for next steps as to what we need to do, and hopefully we'll get consensus on that.
And this is another thing that people should pay attention to, is being engaged with your government, because if you're not having that communication with them, then this can't work, right? Because people like to blame the government like there's some pie in the sky, they're way over there, there's nothing that we can do. But if you actually go and interact with them and let them know your concerns, this will help them to make better decisions. Because if you don't tell them, they don't know.
That's right. For example, we're going to be working with the Secretary of State now. We weren't able to get the legislature to approve this study, so we're going to work with the Secretary of State's office to analyze what it would take to implement President Trump's executive order. All right, so what's it going to cost? To do alternative 1A or alternative B, right? So if you do hand counting, what's it cost? What do we need in terms of planning to do that? If, let's say, they decide another alternative is you have some kind of optical character recognition on the machines, where because the executive order says you can't use a barcode, right? So that means on the ballot that is printed out by, for example, Express Vote. So if that's the case, then you have to use optical character recognition to recognize the choices that a voter has made on their ballots, right, when you're tabulating. So, so that's a possibility. That costs money, et cetera. So, I mean, in the end, we want transparency, right? And 132 countries around the world, I believe the number is, don't use machines, right? Who uses machines? The United States. I'm not sure that Canada does or not. Maybe Dale.
Not in the federal elections, they don't.
Okay, but who else uses machines? Venezuela.
Look at what happened to Brazil. Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil. I mean, some of the worst situations, right? So, anyway, so we'll look at the alternatives and we'll analyze it, because right now many states are not prepared to implement President Trump's executive order, and we have to, because that's a big deal. To change that's a massive change from where we're at right now. So we need to be able to handle that, plan for it, because county clerks don't like sudden change, right? So that's when mistakes happen. So we need to get the states ready to make changes to bring transparency to our elections. It has to be done. Okay, just has to be. We need to plow forward until we get there.
Well, and this is something that should be done on a regular basis in the government, not just with elections, but with other things, because you've got to look, like, I mean, you having the background in engineering, you understand this, that you have to look at what possibly could happen and find ways to mitigate it. When you're designing something, building something, you're like, well, this may happen. So how do I make sure that it doesn't happen? Especially when you're looking at something as critical as your election system, you want to make sure that something that could be potentially be bad doesn't happen. Because if somebody completely abuse it to put somebody in by cheating, that is worst case scenario. You don't want that to happen. So how do you mitigate? You take these necessary steps, and we should be bringing that type of thinking into the government. And this is
absolutely. I mean, my my colleagues and myself, we could design an election process that's transparent, that everybody could see what's happening. It's not rocket science. You're just adding numbers for each race. I mean, I could do a do loop to do that, right? But you have to be able to, you have to be able to scan the ballots and, determine either you do hand counting where people can see the ballot and count the races, or if you're using a machine, you have to be able to recognize the choices that they make. And I can say it's not rocket science. And yet, today we can't look at any of the code that any of the vendors are using, right? But that's crazy, right? So that we can't do that. We could have an independent investigator to look at the code and, and sign the necessary documents not to provide any secrets, right, for the companies. But again, this is not rocket science to tabulate ballots. it's just not.
No, and even if it's proprietary and they don't want certain things coming out, people can sign non-disclosure and all these things so that they could go ahead and validate the response, what was going on.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And then if you look at the code, you can determine that nothing suspicious is happening, nothing nefarious is happening. So, and that would provide transparency. But right now we don't get that transparency. Okay, so anyway, that's what I'll say about that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like if you go in to buy a car and you're like, I want to go and inspect it to make sure everything's there. They're like, no, you can't trust us. It works, right? Like that's the kind of thinking that an approach that we're taking. And I think transparency, especially coming from government, no matter what they're doing, is important, especially what you're seeing with Doge coming out with all of those people that were 200 years old and things like that receiving Social Security. Come on.
Transparency. That's it. You got to have transparency. When you have transparency, it's a major deterrent, to bad actors. So, for example, if we had every citizen could audit the ballot images against the precinct totals, which you already have online, that would be a tremendous deterrent to anybody manipulating any election results. Tremendous, because if bad guys know you can check up on them, they're not going to do it, or they're going to think twice about it. Let's say that.
Yes, and then on top. Go ahead.
I mentioned one other example, and then I'll go back to you. I mentioned the example of a bank, right? So why do people put money in their bank? And people care about their money. Okay, they're not going to let that money be stolen from them. So but when and machines do the calculations, they do the tabulation of your balance, right? But I can go online, or I can go into a branch, and I can view every transaction, and I can view how it affects my balance. That builds trust with me because it's transparent. In voting, we don't have that, right? We have to have transparency, and that'll build trust. Period. That's what it takes.
Well, it's
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No worries. It's like with the analogy of the bank. You can take a picture of your money before you put it into the bank machine. Why can't you take the picture of your ballot? Why they wanted to stop you from taking a picture of a ballot? Some of the things that people are doing, we really need to have more, they say, communication with the government, because you have to ask them questions like, does that make sense? And when you give them real life examples, some of them will be like, oh, wait a second. Because sometimes if you're around a bunch of people and they're all doing the same thing, it becomes normal. And if a bunch of people are doing something that's stupid, it all seems normal, because you have a bunch of kids, this in the playground, a bunch of kids were doing something stupid because it seemed normal because everybody else was doing it, because we're all dumb and young. Then you get older and you realize, well, that's probably not so bright, right? Same.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I worked for the federal government for 5 years as a research scientist. And we had a great group. We were dedicated to helping the people. But, at the end of the fiscal year, there was a little thing that happened where if you didn't spend all the money you had allocated, you would lose it, right? And you would be afraid that you wouldn't get that same amount next year. So there was a strong push to spend that money, where in reality, the best thing would be to return it to the taxpayers, right? And nobody was a bad person. It just that's just the way it happened. Okay. And that's, they were worried about their funding, et cetera. And I understand that. So, so we have to shine a light on that. The more transparency, the better. We're getting a lot more transparency in our federal government now. We need transparency in our elections, and that will clear a lot up, and it will deter bad actors from doing bad things.
Yes, and if there's people that think they want to be brazen enough to try, even when there's a transparency, then consequences should be administered if you're that foolish. Because there's always we know there's always somebody who thinks they're bright enough to do something, right?
Exactly.
No, and I agree. This is something that I like what you guys are doing over there. This is something that other states should look at doing in other countries, as a matter of fact, because if the people don't get engaged, and it has to be a group effort of doing all of these different things, because everybody has a vested interest in making sure elections are secure. Because if you don't have a country.
That's correct. And I just want to say to you, Dale, and your listeners that any efforts that we have, any successes that we have, we are standing on the shoulders of so many patriots who have come before us, that have really gone out there and sacrificed their lives and endangered their families to bring these issues to light. I mean, people like Mike, right? Yourself, many other people who have risked so much. And so I feel fortunate that we were able to stand on those shoulders and make progress. And so hopefully we'll also inspire a new generation of citizens to go even further. So let's all work together and make it happen. We have to be civically minded, because it takes all of us to make our country great.
Well, that's exactly it. The country is nothing without the people. It's just an empty piece of land, but you need the people to do something in that country. And I'm a father. I have children. I don't want what we're seeing now left for our children, for my children or anybody's children, because this is not the way things should work. And we want to correct things. And if we don't put in the work, because when they first came to, even here in Canada, Canada was an inhospitable climate. The United States was as well. And they had to go ahead and put a lot of work to build the countries to where they are. And it's going to take work to fix them. That's just the way it is. Right.
Let's keep at it. And let's work for our kids and our grandkids. I mean, we've already saddled them with, trillions of dollars of debt. We've got to dig ourselves out of that, because we can't be a bankrupt country. Okay. So we have to make it work. We have to get involved civically. We have to get involved locally and make a difference. So Dale, I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you, having me on. And I hope your audience members have gained something from this. I certainly have, just in speaking with you as well.
Yes, just quickly before we close here, you want to just tell people where they can reach you, how they can help you, that sort of thing again, before we go.
Yes. So if you're in West Virginia and you are willing to volunteer your time and work with us as a citizens group, then you can go to our website and just submit your information, and we'll give you a call in a day or two. So it's www.citizens4wv electionintegrity.org. Or you can just email me right now at the same address that it's at Gmail. It was on that. It was on that last slide.
Yes.
It was up there. So please do that. And we talk with people all over the state, all over the country, to learn from them. They learn from us. We've looked at legislation from Tennessee and Texas and Georgia, and that's helped us in what we try to do here. So we're all part of a big, grand group country, and we need to work together to better it for our children and grandchildren.
All right. And thank you for coming, and everyone go and check out what he's doing. This is something that we all should start looking into and work with everybody we can, because we want to keep something here for our children and for our families and our country not to go down the tubes. So I'll close here with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. Lord, we thank you for the work that Ed and others like him are doing in West Virginia, and all the other people that are standing up to work together to make their country safe and all of our country safe. And help the men and the women to come together, to work together, to rebuild our families, our churches, our communities, and our nation, that we can have some peace and prosperity and some sensibility for our children, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you again soon. And to everybody, until next time.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Dale. It was a pleasure.
All right.